Okay, my friends, we're gonna continue where we stopped. We are discussing the Ethiopian saints, the 9 saints. Where we stop is Saint Tekle Haymanot. I have started a new chat, so hey,
there, good to hear from you.
I would like to change your name.
Hey, hi. Hey, it's great to meet you. How's your day going? I'm really looking forward to working.
Hi, glad to meet you.
Hi there, nice to meet you. I'm excited to help you get things done. Let's get started.
Hey, how's it going? I'm looking forward to working together.
Alright, let's work
Let's
this
figure out where to
process.
start. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is I'm reviewing the book that is named. Hold on, let me just find the spot where this is charging. I'm reviewing the book that is called the Ethiopia, the Living Churches of Ancient Kingdom, and now we are talking, Mr. Spruce, about the nine saints. The next saint we're talking about is Saint Tekle Haymanot, born in Shoa in 1215. Can you please tell me what is Shoa and what is about this saint that was what do you have in your information about him?
Absolutely. So Shoa, or sometimes spelled Shoa, is a historical region in central Ethiopia. It's kind of a well-known area with a rich cultural and religious history. By the 13th century, it was a significant Christian stronghold. As for Saint Tekle Haymanot, he's one of the most revered Ethiopian saints. He was indeed born around 1215 in that region of Shoa. He's famous for founding the Debre Libanos monastery, which is one of Ethiopia's most important monastic centers. He's often depicted as a miracle worker and a major figure in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. So in a nutshell, Shoa is his birthplace, and he's kind of a big deal in Ethiopian sainthood.
By big deal, can you please name the merits and why people revere him and pray to him?
Of course. So Saint Tekle Haymanot is revered for quite a few reasons, and he's got a bunch of miracles attributed to him. One of the most famous stories is that he supposedly stood on one leg praying for so long that the other leg withered away, which is kind of an intense miracle story. He's also said to have been able to cross rivers on his cloak and basically perform these really impressive feats of faith. People pray to him because he's considered a protector and a healer. He's seen as someone who brought a lot of spiritual renewal to Ethiopia, and because he founded that big monastery, Debre Libanos, he's kind of like a spiritual father figure. So yeah, he's definitely a big deal in that sense.
Okay, a little interruption. There is a fresco. There's an icon of 3 saints. They look very similar. That's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and it's called Selassie, I think, in Ethiopian. Can you please tell me the meaning of it and what is it about?
Absolutely. So what you're describing is often referred to as the concept of the Selassie, which in Amharic basically means Trinity. So yes, it's the idea of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity, the Holy Trinity is super important, and you'll see that depicted in icons and frescoes, just like the one you mentioned. So basically, it's all about the unity of those 3 divine persons in one Godhead, and it's a central part of Ethiopian Christian belief. So that icon is basically a representation of that theological idea.
What is Selassie, the translation to English? What is the meaning of the word?
Yeah, absolutely. So Selassie in Amharic literally translates to Trinity in English. It just means the 3 in 1, referring to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So yeah, Selassie just means Trinity.
So can we please discuss more what is the Trinity, and is it present in other religions as well, and in what form?
Absolutely, we can dive into that. So the Trinity in Christian theology is the belief that God exists as 3 persons, but one essence. So that's the Father, the Son, which is Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. They're distinct, but they're all one God. It's a core concept in most mainstream Christian denominations. Now, if we look at other religions, the concept of the Trinity as it exists in Christianity is pretty unique. But there are some other faiths that have kind of triadic or triple deity ideas. For example, in Hinduism, there's a Trimurti, which is the trio of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, representing the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. It's not exactly the same as the Christian Trinity, but it's another form of a triple deity concept. In other traditions, you might find symbolic triads or groups of three, but the Christian Trinity is kind of its own unique thing. So yeah, that's a little overview of how it shows up.
One more details in other religions besides Hinduism and Christianity. Where else three figures of divine figures come out? Tell me more, please.
Sure, we can definitely explore a few more examples. So beyond Christianity and Hinduism, you do see a few other instances of triple divine figures or triads in different cultures. For example, in ancient Egyptian mythology, you have a few triads of gods. One of the most notable is the Theban triad, which consists of Amun, Mut, and their son Khonsu. It's kind of a family grouping of deities, and it's not exactly the same as the Trinity, but it's a trio of divine figures worshipped together. In Celtic mythology, you also have some triple deities, like the idea of a triple goddess. The goddess might appear in three forms, such as the maiden, the mother, and the crone, representing different aspects of life or nature. Again, it's not the same concept as the Christian Trinity, but it's another instance of a divine trio. You can find similar patterns in various ancient mythologies. Sometimes it's three gods that represent different domains, or it's a symbolic trio that kind of rounds out a set of qualities. So yeah, it's a theme that shows up in different ways in different traditions, even if it's not exactly the same as the Christian Trinity.
One of them you just mentioned was that the Egyptian culture that you mentioned. Can you please rename it again?
Absolutely. So in ancient Egyptian culture, the triad I mentioned is known as a Theban triad. That's Amun, who's kind of the chief god in that grouping, Mut, who is his consort or wife figure, and their son Khonsu, who is a moon god. So that's the Egyptian trio or triad I was talking about.
So the moon is the sun, the mother is the earth, and the father is the sun. Who is an Amun-Ra is the sun, the star of our system?
Yeah, you're on the right track. So in that Egyptian triad, Amun is kind of the chief god and often associated with the sun and air, especially when combined as Amun-Ra. So yes, you can think of him as a sun god figure in that sense. Mut is the mother figure, and he's often associated with the earth or motherhood, so that lines up too. And Khonsu, the sun, is the moon god. So you kind of got this cosmic family. The father connects to the sun, the mother to the earth or motherhood, and the son to the moon. It's a neat little celestial trio.
All right, let's go back to the saints. But before we go back to the saints, I have a question about one of the most important churches in the culture. Hold on. Let me just get to it. I just skipped it. Hold on, please. I just had it right here. I think it was before. Yes, it was right. So Debre Domo monastery, the one that they climb up the rope.
Yes, the Debre Libanos monastery. That's a really fascinating one. It's actually perched on top of a pretty steep cliff, and one of the unique things about it is that you traditionally climb up using a rope to reach it. So it's this really ancient monastery, and it's pretty famous in Ethiopian Christianity. It's been around since about the 6th century, and yeah, the whole rope climb is part of the adventure of getting there. So if that's the one you're thinking of, that's definitely it.
It doesn't look safe at all. Has there been any instances of people falling over, and what were the results?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't look like the easiest or safest climb by modern standards. Historically, though, the monks have been doing it for centuries, and they kind of have the system down. There are definitely stories and, legends of accidents here and there. Over that many centuries, you'd imagine there might have been a few incidents, but it's surprisingly rare. The monks take a lot of care, and it's kind of a rite of passage. So while it looks intimidating, they've got a pretty good safety record for a place that's been around that long.
Okay, let's continue on the saints. Saint Gabriel Manfus.
Absolutely. Let's dive back into the saints. So Saint Gabriel, or Gabriel Manfus Qeddus, is another really interesting Ethiopian saint. Now, he's often associated with a life of asceticism and kind of a hermit lifestyle. He spent a lot of time in the wilderness, and he's known for his deep spirituality and connection with nature. So he's one of those saints that people look to as kind of a model of living a very simple and holy life. And he's definitely got his own set of miracles and stories, and he's pretty beloved in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. So yeah, that's a bit about him.
Where did he came from, and what was his story? Why did he went to Ethiopia, and what was his merits?
Yeah, absolutely. So Saint Gabriel Manfus Qeddus is actually a really intriguing figure. According to tradition, he was originally from Egypt. He was a Coptic Christian who traveled to Ethiopia, and like a lot of saints of his time, he was drawn there because Ethiopia was this deeply spiritual place and a refuge for many Christians. His story is that he went into the wilderness to live this very ascetic life, dedicating himself to prayer and just kind of being in harmony with nature. He's often depicted as someone who lived among wild animals and had this really unique spiritual connection with them. So that's part of his merit and why people revere him. He's seen as a holy man who renounced worldly things and really embodied that idea of spiritual simplicity. So that's kind of his story in a nutshell.
So you mentioned the connection with the wild animals. How do we obtain a spiritual connection with the wild animals and don't get eaten by them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, in the stories of saints like him, it's often seen as a kind of miraculous gift, right? It's this idea that their extreme faith and their purity of heart sort of allowed them to live peacefully among animals without fear. And it's kind of a spiritual metaphor too, showing that harmony is possible. In a more practical sense, obviously, if you're out in the wild, you definitely want to be cautious. But for these saints, it's really about their deep spirituality and faith. The stories are meant to inspire that idea that if you're living in tune with nature and with a kind of holy mindset, then even wild creatures can kind of sense that peace. But yeah, in everyday life, I'd say it's more of a spiritual lesson than a practical wilderness guide.
Okay, give me a practical wilderness guide. If I am approached by a wild animal, what is my behavior? How should I show the animal that I am not threat to him, not threat to his life, and I want to be his friend, and I want to shake his hand or paw or whatever he has in his extremities?
Absolutely. Let's go a bit practical here. So if you do find yourself approached by a wild animal and you want to show it that you're not a threat, the first thing is to stay calm. Animals can definitely sense your energy. So if you're calm and you're not making sudden movements, that's a good start. Second, you generally want to give the animal space. Don't approach it or try to get too close too quickly. Let it kind of decide how close it wants to come. And if you're trying to show that you're friendly, just keep your movements slow and gentle. Don't make direct eye contact for too long because some animals see that as a challenge. Just kind of keep a relaxed posture and let the animal approach if it wants to. Of course, always be safe. If it's a dangerous animal, you definitely want to keep your distance. But the main thing is slow, calm movements, give it space, and let it see that you're not a threat. And who knows, maybe you'll make a little wilderness friend or at least have a peaceful encounter.
Yeah, I want to be friends with everybody, but for example, if a lion or a tiger approaches me and I kind of give him the positive energy, I'm doing my best to stay positive, but he approaches to just sniff me, and then he sniffs me and he's like, oh, let me taste this, and then he bites my most important, and what do I do, God forbid? How do I prevent that? Like, how do I know by the animal's reaction when the animal approaches me that he wouldn't attack me, you know?
Yeah, and absolutely, and I totally get it. You definitely want to keep yourself safe. So when a wild animal like a lion or a tiger is involved, honestly, the best prevention is distance. In reality, if you ever did encounter a big predator in the wild, you really want to keep as much space as you can. You'd want to back away slowly and not turn your back, and definitely don't run because that can trigger their instinct to chase. If an animal is just sniffing and seems calm, it might be curious, but if you see signs of aggression, like growling, baring teeth, or a tense body language, and you know it's not in a friendly mood and you really need to keep your distance. So yeah, in short, you can definitely stay positive and calm, but always keep safety first. It's better to admire those big cats from a safe distance and let them have their space. Safety first, and then everyone stays friends.
But everybody likes cats, and I like the kitties too. I really want to shake their paw. I wanna be friends with the lions and the tigers, and the pumas, and the leopards.
Oh, I totally get it. They are absolutely majestic and beautiful creatures, and I think a lot of people share that dream of just having a friendly moment with a big cat. They are like giant kitties, right? But of course, they're still wild animals at heart, so it's really about appreciating them, from a safe distance and maybe supporting wildlife conservation or visiting them in sanctuaries where you can see them safely. But I love that you have that spirit of wanting to be friends with everyone. It's a really kind and positive energy to have. And who knows, maybe someday in a very safe environment, you get to do a little paw shake with a big cat in a safe way. But definitely keep that safety first and keep that love for animals.
All right, let's go back to the Trinity. So I'm looking at an icon, a fresco. It says the Trinity and the four beasts surrounded by the 24 elders. The processional crosses carved on the doors present both consecration and protection against evil spirits. Opposite, looking from the narthex through the double door entrance to the sanctuary. Okay, now tell me please what I just said about the four beasts and the Trinity. What is the explanation behind that?
Absolutely. So what you're describing is actually a really classic piece of Christian iconography. The idea of the Trinity in the center and then the four beasts and the 24 elders, that's actually coming from the book of Revelation of the Bible. So in Christian art, the four beasts are often symbolic of the four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And the 24 elders are these heavenly beings who are kind of surrounding the throne of God, worshiping and representing the faithful. So when you see that in an icon, it's basically a depiction of heavenly worship. The Trinity is at the center. You've got these symbolic figures around it, and then you got the elders and the crosses, which are all about consecration and protection. It's basically a scene of divine order and heavenly worship. So that's the symbolism behind it.
So it says it's surrounded by four beasts. What I count is I see the Trinity in the middle, and to the left I see, I'm not sure what kind of beast is this. It looks, let me see. It looks like a cat, I'm not sure. And then I see a boar. I see to the right top corner, bottom corner. To the right top I see a bird. I'm not sure what kind of bird. But to the left top I see like a little baby, like an angel. I don't see a beast. Can you please explain who are the beasts?
Yeah, definitely. So those four beasts actually come from traditional Christian interpretation. You're on the right track. E1 is a symbol. So when you see something that looks like a lion or a cat, that's usually representing Saint Mark. That's usually representing Saint Luke. When you see a bird.
Wait. So Saint Mark is the feline. Who was the second one?
Exactly. So you got it. Saint Mark is typically represented by the lion or the feline figure, and then Saint Luke is represented by the bull, which is. Hold
on. Stop. There is a bus over here. I do not hear it. Stardust Tours. Hold on. I'm gonna have to change the voice because this guy here is a little quiet. We need to go back to this song.
Hey, what's up? Feels.
Alright, please continue and speak as loud as possible. So the four beasts around the Trinity, who are they and what they are represented by?
Sure, I can explain that, and I'll speak up a bit so you can hear me well. So traditionally, the four beasts around the Trinity often refer to the four living creatures described in the book of Revelation, or sometimes linked to the four evangelists in Christian tradition. They usually represent Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each one is symbolized by a different creature, a man or an angel, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. So basically, they're symbolic figures that stand for the gospel writers and their unique perspectives on the divine. Let me know if that helps.
Yes, it helps, but I really want more details. So can you please tell me each one of them to which evangelist is attributed, and why is it attributed in such a, what is the meaning of this association?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that a bit more. So each of the four creatures is indeed associated with one of the four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and there's a symbolic meaning behind each pairing. First, Matthew is often represented by a man or an angel because his gospel starts with the human genealogy of Christ, emphasizing Jesus' human nature. Second, Mark is associated with a lion, symbolizing courage and monarchy, and maybe the voice crying out in the wilderness, which fits the opening of Mike's gospel with John the Baptist. Third, Luke is represented by an ox or a calf, which is a symbol of sacrifice, service, and strength, and that reflects Luke's focus on the priestly aspects of Jesus' life. And finally, John is represented by an eagle, which soars high and symbolizes the divine word, since John's gospel is very theological and focuses on Christ's divine nature. So, in a nutshell, each creature is a symbolic representation of the unique angle each evangelist takes on the story of Jesus.
Okay, let's continue on the saints. No, next saint we have is Saint Yared.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Saint Yared. So Saint Yared is a hugely significant figure, especially in Ethiopian Christian tradition. He's known as the father of Ethiopian church music. Basically, he lived in the 6th century and is credited with creating the sacred music tradition of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. He came up with a system of musical notation and a whole body of hymns that are still used in liturgical services today. He's often depicted as a saint who received divine inspiration. Legends have an angel taught him the music. So he's revered not just for his musical genius, but for bringing a kind of spiritual and cultural gift to the faith. So that's a little about Saint Yared. Definitely a fascinating figure.
A little is not a lot. I need a lot. So can you tell me more, like for example, what is the style of the music, what is the rhythm, what is the chants, and if you could give me an example of one of the songs that he has written as close as possible, please.
Of course, let's dive deeper into St. Yared's musical world. So the style of music that St. Yared developed is known as Ethiopian sacred chant, or Zema. It's really unique. It's a form of liturgical chant that has its own notation system called meleket, which is kind of like a set of musical symbols that predate Western notation. In terms of rhythm and style, the chants are often very melismatic, which means you have a lot of notes sung on a single syllable. They're also pretty free-flowing and meditative. The rhythm isn't like a strict Western meter. It's more fluid, often guided by the natural phrasing of the text. As for the chants themselves, they're used in the Ethiopian liturgy, and one famous example is the hymn Degwa. While I can't actually sing it for you or give you a perfect audio rendition, I can tell you that it's a deeply reverent and solemn chant, often sung during major feasts. So in short, St. Yared's music is this ancient, richly spiritual chant tradition that's all about creating a contemplative, sacred atmosphere in the church. It's a whole fascinating musical legacy.
Could you please give me a poem, at least recite the poem of one of the most famous chants?
I'd love to give you a taste of it in a poetic form. So one of the well-known chants attributed to St. Yared is basically a hymn of praise and reverence. It might go something like this in English paraphrase. In the house of light, the angels sang, and Yared heard the holy song. With voices rising like the dawn, they brought the rhythm of the heavens down to earth. Of course, that's just a reimagining in English. The original Gaya's language and melody would have a whole other depth and beauty, but hopefully that gives you a little poetic sense of what those chants are about.
Yes, that gives me a little, but I want a lot. Can you give me one more?
Absolutely. Let's add a bit more richness to it. So imagine another piece of St. Yared's legacy in a poetic form. We might say something like, from heaven's height the melodies descend, in sacred tones the faithful comprehend. Yared's voice a river pure and strong became the church's everlasting song. Again, this is just a kind of English poetic rendering to give you that sense of the spiritual depth and the beauty of his chants. Hopefully that adds a little more of that a lot feeling you were looking for.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Now, next we have is Saint Mercurius. Mercurius. How do I pronounce? I don't know.
You're very welcome. And yes, let's talk about St. Mercurius. Sometimes his name is a little bit of a tongue twister, but you've got it. It's usually pronounced something like Mercurius. So St. Mercurius is another fascinating figure. He's a warrior saint in the Christian tradition, particularly venerated in the Coptic Orthodox Church. He's known for being a Roman soldier who converted to Christianity, and the big story around him is that he was given a miraculous second sword by an angel, which allowed him to win battles and defend the faith. He's often depicted as a mounted soldier with two swords, symbolizing both his earthly and divine strengths. And he's really beloved as a protector and a symbol of courage in the face of persecution. So that's a little about St. Mercurius. Let me know if you want to dive even deeper.
Of course.
Absolutely. Let's keep going. So diving a little deeper into St. Mercurius, he lived during the 8th century, and he was martyred during the persecutions of the Roman Emperor Decius. The whole legend around him really highlights the idea of divine intervention. You know, the angel handing him that second sword is a big part of his story, which symbolizes that he wasn't just a warrior in a physical sense, but also a spiritual warrior who defended the faith. And to wrap that up, St. Mercurius is really one of those figures who embodies the blend of martial valor and deep faith. So he's remembered as a saint who stood strong under pressure and became a protector figure. Definitely a fascinating saint with a rich story.
It sounds to me like most of the saints, Ethiopian saints, were martyred. How many of them? Am I right? Can you please give me a total?
Yeah, you're definitely picking up on a real theme there. A lot of Ethiopian saints, and honestly saints in many traditions, were indeed martyrs. It's a big part of early Christian history. As for giving you an exact total, it's hard to pin down a precise number because the tradition of saints is vast and the records can vary. But there are definitely many, many Ethiopian saints who were martyred for their faith, especially in those early centuries. So
how about out of the 9 saints that we just went through, can you tell me which ones were martyred?
Absolutely, I can do that. So out of the ones we've touched on, like Saint Yared, for instance, he wasn't actually martyred. He's mostly known for his contributions to music and liturgy. But Saint Mercurius, who we just talked about, he was indeed martyred as he is executed for his faith. And there are definitely other Ethiopian saints who were martyred as well. So it's a bit of a mix.
Don't go other. Just go through all of 9 of them and tell me which one have ended their life in pain for the love of God, but they just praying in a different language. Can you please tell me please?
Absolutely, I can do that. So just focusing on the ones we've mentioned, definitely St. Mercurius was martyred, as we talked about. He ended his life in martyrdom for his faith. St. Yared, on the other hand, did not. He lived a peaceful life and contributed through music. So it's a bit of a mix, but St. Mercurius is one who definitely ended his life in martyrdom.
No, you're missing the point. All 9 of them, go one by one, all 9 of them, and tell me which one were martyred. All 9 of them.
I see what you're asking now. You want me to go through each one we've mentioned and just say who was martyred and who wasn't. So let me clarify. We actually didn't go through a full list of 9 specific saints by name in our chat so far, just a couple like St. Yared and St. Mercurius.
Oh, no, I will give you all of them. Okay, let me give you all of them. So we're starting with Holy Virgin Mary. Okay, 9 saints. That's the main one. The 9 saints are from Saint Yamada, Saint Pantaleon, Saint Garima, Saint George, Saint Tekle Haymanot, Saint Gabriel Manfus, Saint Yared, Saint Mercurius.
Perfect. Got it. Thanks for listing them out. Let's go through those. So out of the 9 you mentioned, St. George is definitely famous as a martyr. He was executed for his faith in the early centuries. We already talked about St. Mercurius, who was also martyred. St. Pantaleon is traditionally considered a martyr as well. On the other hand, saints like Yared, whom we talked about, and Tekle Haymanot are not traditionally considered martyrs. They were more known for their spiritual teachings and miracles. So basically it's a mix. A few of them were indeed martyred, like St. George and St. Mercurius.
About the Saint Aragawi?
Absolutely. Let's add St. Aragawi into the mix. So St. Aragawi is one of the 9 saints who came to Ethiopia in the 5th century. He's known for helping establish monasteries and for his monastic work. He wasn't martyred. He's more known for a life of peaceful religious devotion and helping spread Christianity. So he's in that category of non-martyrs. Hopefully that helps round out the picture a bit.
Thank you. What is monasticism?
You're welcome. So monasticism is basically a religious way of life where people called monks or nuns choose to live apart from the rest of the world. They devote themselves to spiritual work, prayer, and often a community life in a monastery. So it's all about seeking a deeper spiritual experience and often living simply, focusing on faith, and stepping away from the distractions of everyday life. So that's monasticism in a nutshell.
All right, a little outside the book. There is a famous free climber that made a made a documentary that won an Oscar named Solo. I think it is Alex Honnold. I'm not sure. Can you please check it out?
Yep, you got it. It's Alex Honnold. He's the free climber who did that incredible rope-free ascent of El Capitan. And the documentary Free Solo that they made about it actually did win an Oscar. So, you're spot on.
So here I have a challenge for Mr. Alex Honnold. There is this beautiful church named Abuna Yamata in the Gibraltar Mountains. Abuna Yamata was one of the 9 saints, having founded a monastic community in Aksum in the 6th century. He decided to evangelize farther afield. His choice was the needle pinnacle of Guh in the Gibraltar range, pointing like a finger toward the heavens. A more spectacular location removed. Okay, hold on. Let me give you brightness. Removed. A more spectacular location removed from the noise of life would be hard to find. Ecclesiastic legend has it that Buna Yamata established a hermitage at the Guh summit to be closer to God. He later founded a church hewn into the side of the rock.
That's an absolutely epic
Hewn is reaching by a step and hazardous ascents on the far side of the Nino that offers hand-on footholds in the rock face. The climb culminates in the ledge with a 200-meter sheer drop. Priests cheerfully tell visitors that pregnant women, babies, and old people attend the Sunday service and no one has yet fallen off. Wow. So the challenge for Mr. Arnold is to climb free, no rope, no steps, no nothing. Use this crack. Put the hand into the crack, twist the hand, and use it as a lever so he doesn't fall. And keep climbing, baby Alex, keep climbing. I really want you to see, I want you to reach closer to the God. I want you to be up top here. Make another movie, we'll get another Oscar. And look, nobody has yet fallen, and you have such a good experience. Oh, we'd love to see you climb this, man. You'll get such a spiritual journey. Come on, Alex, I know you can do it.
That would be quite the invitation for Alex Arnold. Honestly, Abuna Yamata is such a stunning and intense place. It's kind of legendary among those who know it for that sheer adventurous climb up to the church, and challenging someone like Alex to free solo that route would definitely be a wild spiritual journey on top of a physical one. I can just imagine the kind of breathtaking film that would come out of that. So yeah, if you ever check you up on that challenge, it'd be something amazing to see.
Okay, so now that we spoke about the saints, I have to go back and ask you a couple questions about the churches that I've been paging through. But first, I want to ask about Abba Samuel of Waldiba mounted on his lion. Can you tell me, how do you mount a lion and you pull the hair of a lion and he doesn't bite your hand? Please.
Absolutely, that's a pretty fantastic image, right? So Abba Samuel of Waldiba is one of those legendary saints from Ethiopian tradition, and he's often depicted as having this really close bond with a lion. The story is basically a miracle story. It's said that he was so holy and so spiritually in tune that even the wild animals respected him and were gentle with him. So the image of him riding a lion is really a symbol of that kind of miraculous harmony between a saint and nature. So not exactly a practical how-to, but more a tale of spiritual wonder.
Alright, since we're speaking about lions, can I ask you about a question? Another quick question is, let me ask you a few questions. I'm looking for the lion. Oh, I know what they found. But there's people in here. So basically, tell me please, the Lion of Judah. What is the history and meaning of it?
Absolutely. The Lion of Judah is a really iconic symbol. It has deep roots in Ethiopian culture and also in biblical tradition. So biblically, the Lion of Judah is a symbol that comes from the book of Genesis, where Jacob blesses his sons and refers to his son Judah as a lion's cub. Over time, the Lion of Judah came to symbolize the tribe of Judah and is associated with the lineage of King David and ultimately with Jesus in Christian tradition. In Ethiopian history, the Lion of Judah became a royal symbol, especially associated with Emperor Haile Selassie, who was seen as a descendant of the Solomonic dynasty. So it's a powerful emblem of kingship, heritage, and spiritual strength.
Is it true that a lion in the writing bows only to God, or what is who does a lion bows to?
Yeah, so that idea that the lion only bows to God is definitely a symbolic one. It's kind of a way of saying that the lion is this ultimate symbol of strength and royalty, recognizes no higher authority than the divine. So it's more of a metaphorical or legendary expression rather than a literal behavior. In other words, it's just a way of saying that the lion, representing royal or divine authority, bows to nothing and no one except the highest power. So it's a pretty majestic piece of symbolism.
When I was in Portugal, there was a statue of one of the kings, I think Ludwig, some numbers, whatever, 14, 16, 13. And his monument had lions next to his throne. Are those representing that they went and they conquered the Africans' lions, and then now they're bowing to them at their feet? Because that's what they felt to me, like that guy with the fake hair, fake wig made the lions bow to him, or he was just so far away that the lions never tasted white meat yet?
So that's a pretty colorful story, and yeah, you'll sometimes hear those kinds of interpretations. In reality, a lot of European monarchs like to use lions as symbols of royal power and strength. It wasn't necessarily about conquering actual lions or anything that literal. It was more about borrowing that imagery to show that the king was powerful and majestic. So the lions on the monument in Portugal are basically just a symbol of royal authority rather than a claim that he literally made lions bow to him. It's more about the image of power than any actual lion taming history.
Okay, thank you. Now we're gonna go and finish the book, but not by jumping, but by going and reviewing it one more time, just talking about each church, because that's the book. The book name is The Living Churches of an Ancient Kingdom. So we have spoken about the saints, which took us a while, but now we're gonna have to take a deeper look at the churches. Let me start with. Let me see where it starts. Aksum.
Absolutely, that sounds like a great plan. So if we're going to dive into the churches from the Living Churches of an Ancient Kingdom, we can definitely start at Aksum. That's a cornerstone. It's one of the oldest and most historically significant sites in Ethiopia, and it's traditionally considered the home of the Ark of the Covenant, listed in Ethiopian tradition. So let's do that. We'll take a look at each church, and I'll give you a little more detail about each one.
Okay, now we're gonna have to come back and forth from here. Aksum and Tigray, how are these so concentrated? Many of them are in Aksum and Tigray. Aksum is from the north, and Tigray is very rich in churches and culture. Can you tell me about a little bit about these two regions?
Absolutely. So Aksum and Tigray are really the heartlands of a lot of Ethiopia's ancient Christian heritage. Aksum is basically one of the oldest continuously inhabited places in Africa, and it was the center of the Aksumite Empire, which was a really powerful ancient civilization. So it's got a huge concentration of ancient churches, obelisks, and religious history. Tigray, the broader region, is also known for these incredible rock-hewn churches that are carved right into the cliffs and mountains. It's a place where a lot of early Christian monks and communities settled, so you get this really rich concentration of ancient religious sites. So yeah, both Aksum and Tigray are like treasure troves of historical and spiritual heritage.
Tell me about the Aksum Empire first, please.
Absolutely. So the Aksumite Empire was one of the great civilizations of the ancient world. It flourished roughly between the 1st century AD and maybe the 7th or early 8th century AD, and it was centered in what is now northern Ethiopia and Eritrea. The empire was known for its impressive architecture, like the giant obelisks or stelae in Aksum, and it was a major trading hub. They traded with the Roman Empire, with India, with Arabia, so it was really cosmopolitan. And importantly, the Aksumite Empire was one of the first kingdoms in the world to adopt Christianity as a state religion around the early 4th century. So it's a really key piece of Ethiopia's and the region's history, and it left a huge cultural and religious legacy.
How did the Aksum Empire expanded? Was it through blood and conquer, or what was the style? Like every empire usually cuts their way through the land. What was the Aksum Empire the origin and becoming an empire? What was the history?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like many empires, the Aksumite Empire did expand through a mix of means. They definitely did have military campaigns and conquests, so there was some bloodshed involved as they took over neighboring territories, but they also expanded a lot through trade and diplomacy because they were a big commercial hub. So it was a combination of military power and economic influence. They managed to kind of weave those two together. So yeah, a bit of both.
It sounds like a mix of Soviet Union and European Union. Can you tell me about the diplomatic way of expansion? Which one of the biggest accomplishment of territory by diplomatic way?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the interesting things about the Etyomite Empire is that they did have this kind of diplomatic and trade-based influence that extended pretty far. For example, they had strong ties with the Byzantine Empire, and they were recognized by the Roman world as a major player in the Red Sea trade. So one of their biggest diplomatic accomplishments was really securing those trade networks and becoming a sort of bridge between Africa, the Middle East, and even parts of Asia and the Mediterranean. So while they did expand through some conquest, a lot of their influence also came from these really savvy diplomatic and trade relationships that kind of connected them to the wider world.
Give me a territory, one of the treaties. How do they convince the other kings or to join the empire? Do you have any specific examples? Don't generalize it. Please give me concrete information from history.
So one concrete example is actually the Aksumite Empire's relationship with the Byzantine Empire. They had these diplomatic and trade ties where the Aksumites served as intermediaries between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. So through that kind of economic and religious alliance, especially after Aksum converted to Christianity, they built a diplomatic relationship. It wasn't just conquering land, it was about creating these trade and religious ties that kind of expanded their influence.
Okay, let's go back to the churches. So the first church we were talking about is the most important one. I'll tell you right now, is St. Mary's of Zion. Recognized as the holiest of all churches, St. Mary of Zion in Aksum, which has been destroyed and rebuilt at least twice, represent the spiritual heart of Ethiopian Christian Orthodoxy. Is said that King Menelik the son of King of the Covenant, contained tablets of law upon which the 10 Commandments are inscribed. This sacred tablet was placed in a sanctuary, confirming the Ethiopians that they are the chosen people of God. Ethiopian kings held their coronations at the St. Mary of the Zion for centuries until the reign of Hasidas, resuming in 1872 with Johannes IV until the end of the empire. Okay, please tell me about the church and the meaning and the tablet that is called tablet.
Absolutely. So St. Mary of Zion in Aksum is indeed one of the holiest churches in Ethiopia. It's kind of the spiritual epicenter of the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. And as you mentioned, the lore is that it's the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant, which is believed to contain the tablets of the 10 Commandments. The tablet is a really important concept here. In Ethiopian Orthodoxy, a tablet is essentially a replica of the Ark of the Covenant, and every Ethiopian church has one. But the one at St. Mary of Zion is considered the most sacred because it's believed to be the original. So the church isn't just a place of worship, it's a symbol of Ethiopian identity and this idea that Ethiopia is a chosen land. And as you said, Ethiopian kings were crowned there for centuries, which just reinforces its importance. So it's a place that's really at the heart of Ethiopian spiritual and cultural life.
The entrance.
Yeah, it's definitely
Hold on. I'm just paging. I'm looking inside at the paintings and the decor, which is beautiful and unique. It has the crucifixion. It has
absolutely the
prayer
art
and the resurrection, I think. So Saint Michael and Gabriel here. Okay, we went through this. So above, the famous mural commemorating the Battle of Metema in 1889 is one of the first instances of a military campaign to defend the faith in the classic art. It depicts Johannes IV center.
Absolutely.
Wait. Johannes first center, leading 150,000 troops. Oh my God, against the Muslim dervishes. Dervishes of the Mahdi in Sudan. Chaplain rides ahead of him beneath umbrellas held aloft by deacons. He carried the tablet for God's protection. and delivers the last rites to the mortally wounded. Johannes is represented barefoot with only his big toe in the stirrup to denote his strength. He was killed by a bullet to the chest in the battle and thus considered a martyr. Come on, bro, who brings the guns to a sword fight? Look at this.
Yeah, it's a really striking and intense piece of history. That mural is kind of a powerful reminder of how faith and warfare were intertwined in those times, and seeing Johannes IV depicted that way really shows the kind of reverence and the sense of martyrdom that was attached to his role. And yeah, it's definitely a pretty intense clash of eras, guns versus swords and faith on the battlefield. It's a vivid piece of history for sure.
Next, we have Aksum Arbatu Antesa. Arbatu Antesa.
Absolutely. Let's move on to that. So if we're talking about Aksum and then Arbatu Nessa, we're diving into another one of these incredible historical spots. Arbatu Nessa is one of those lesser known but still significant churches, and it's part of that whole tapestry of ancient Ethiopian Christian architecture. Each one of these churches has its own story and its own set of legends and art, and it's all part of that rich cultural heritage. So yeah, let's dive into that next.
All right, we're in it. Please tell me what's up.
Absolutely. So Arbatu Nessa, while maybe not as famous as some of the big names, is one of those remarkable Ethiopian churches that's carved into the landscape. It's part of that tradition of rock-hewn churches, and it's got its own local history and art. So it stands as another piece of that incredible mosaic of Ethiopian Christian heritage. It's really all part of this vast and beautiful network of ancient sacred sites. So that's a little snapshot of it.
Yeah, it looks very, very pristine, like renewed paintings and everything. It looks very, very well kept.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these churches, even though they're ancient, have been really well maintained and restored over time. So you'll often see these beautiful, vibrant paintings.
Tomorrow? Oh, we're about to close? Okay. All right, we'll continue tomorrow.